Hi, I'm Sylvia Yu. Welcome to this edition of Inspiring You with Sylvia Yu. I'm joined by a very special guest, my dear friend Jason Chu. He's a rapper, he's an activist, and an educator based in Los Angeles, but he tours around the world bringing hope and a message of healing. Jason, wow, I haven't seen you in how many years? Welcome.
It's so good to see your face. I love your jacket. It's
Oh,
a
thank you.
beautiful, like the Chanel shape. Yeah, I love it.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you. I know you're great at aesthetics. I think it was 6 years ago when you were in Hong Kong last. We had brought
Yes.
you out
Yes.
for a
Seven.
concert.
Seven this
Was
summer.
it 7? Oh wow,
Yeah.
your memory is impeccable. So how did you get your start in rap? You know, as a rap artist, you graduated from Yale, and
Mhm.
then what? Or I believe the roots of rap started in high school, right? Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So what it was, so I'm Chinese American. My mom's from Malaysia and my dad's from Thailand, but they're ethnically Chinese,
Oh,
right?
I
So
didn't
I
know
grew
that.
up, yeah, yeah. So my parents are from Southeast Asia, but
Yeah.
Chinese,
Yes.
Um, and so I grew up in a very white suburb, very sort of, East Coast in Delaware, for those
I
who
I
no one's heard of it.
understand. I understand. Yeah.
And yeah, and so you know what it's like, like there were a couple other
Absolutely.
Asian kids around. Um, and but often it was just like my sister and me. And so for me, it was very distinctly, it was this one moment in my freshman year of high school when my boy Yusef came up to me and we just were talking. He was one of my buddies. We took AP Latin together. We were taking AP Latin.
I took AP as
And
well.
we're
We
more
didn't
alike
have
than I
IB, we
even
had
knew.
AP, but yes, go on.
Yep. And and we were just talking about music, like high school stuff. And I was like, oh man, I just can't. I was telling you, I just can't get into rap. Like I like pop punk and I like pop music, but rap, I just never could understand it. And he was like, yo, let me, like I know you're a smart dude. I know you're very into like words, into English class and literature. So he burned me three CDs, two really underground ones, and
Yeah.
then Jay-Z, a Jay-Z CD. And I rode the bus for like the month that year, just listening to that in my CD player. And it just felt so cool. It felt so cool. And I think what was so cool about it, now looking back, what I think was so cool about it was that, my whole life I'd excelled at like, essays or story writing or, poetry competitions or
Nerd.
whatever.
You were a
But,
total nerd. I mean, that's where
you
we can
know,
relate, right?
you
Where
know,
our inner nerd is still there, raging to get out.
dude, honestly, a lot of rap people are very nerdy
Yes,
about
I can.
what they're into. You
Yeah.
know, like I think if you really love something, you become nerdy about it, whether it's a video
Mhm.
game or football or fashion or music,
Yeah.
right? And and so what I realized was I had I loved writing and I loved reading, but so often the way you're taught to write in school, right, is to fit someone else's template,
Yeah.
right? So you know this very well, right? Like the format to get an A on this paper. Yeah, you got to make a good argument, but really it just comes down to five-paragraph essay. Here's your,
Mhm.
hypothesis. Here's your thesis. Here's your first support, your second support, your third support, your conclusion. Okay, great. That's a great essay. And I hate that. I've always sort of chafed against the constraints of
Mhm.
format and
Yes,
this
you're quite
idea.
unconventional, Jason.
I
Definitely.
definitely am.
Yeah.
And your listeners will hear just how unconventional I'm sure in this convo. But what I heard in the rap music, it was the first time I heard voices who, instead of making something to align in and assimilate in and fit in with what someone told them they were supposed to be, they were saying, hey, this is me. This is how I talk at home. This is how my friends talk to each other. These are the things we care about. And whether or not you consider it appropriate or polite or grammatically correct, I'm going to do me. And And if you want to partake, you're welcome to buy the CD, you're welcome to download the album. And if you don't, I don't need you. And that to me said so much as a Chinese American kid who, Asian American culture, we are not really given a place in society that fits us. We're always being asked, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, right? Being asked to fit into a box that doesn't really fit you, but it's the box that you're given.
Mm.
And to me, rap and hip hop was saying we're going to build our own box. We're going to make our own space. We're going to claim our own space and voice, and and that's home. And if you want to come to our home, you're welcome. And so that was so revolutionary for me. And I became a fan of that attitude and that ethos, and started nerding out about it, started digging into it.
So how old were you, and what did it do for you as a teenager, as a pimply, I imagine, hormonal,
Oh yeah.
on all cylinders raging? So what did
Hmm.
rap do for you? And do you remember the lines of your first rap song that you wrote? And could you
I
just
do.
spontaneously give us like a 20-second concert?
Yeah, I remember my first rap ever. I said, "Yo, my whole crew standing around the entrance. Y'all got your mouths out, looking like a, was it? Yo, my whole crew is standing around the entrance. Y'all got your mouths out, thinking I'm a dentist. My flow slice feathers, put MCs on ice cold stretches. Y'all kept on my lyrics like they buried treasures. The broadsword slashing in the concrete jungle fashion, mashing words together like I'm making up a bastard. See, my purpose ain't to start beef or get arrested, but if you roll on me, the charge won't be contested. We're the best kids. It's the crew, the new Fruity Loops. Got them going hyper like sugar from bowls of Fruity Loops. I'm mystic, cynical on dollars, don't get twisted. Spiritual visions keep you wound up like ballistas. Mr. Master Blaster, that's a fact, sir. Pass up the mic and get ready on the grammar. Step to the front and I'm swinging verbal swords. Got fans of all sorts screaming words. Oh Lord.
Very deep,
Yeah.
very, very deep,
Yeah.
like deceptively very deep, right? Like you really
Oh,
got
thank
to
you.
listen or even read. I have to read the lyrics of some raps to really, because I can't
Yeah.
catch all the words. But wow, Jason, how old were you?
Yeah, so that one actually, that was because I would freestyle with friends. So what happened? I started listening to music, and it just felt cool. Like I said, it felt so different and empowering
Mm,
that my friends, so my boy Yusef and our other buddies Chris and Godfrey and Dominique, we get together and we do little like really really terrible freestyles, just like not skillful at all, but just making up lines and words and flowing over beats.
and these
And
are your
then
high
when I
school
got
friends. These are your high
these
school
are my
friends,
high
right?
school
Oh,
buddies, still my boys. Um,
amazing. And
and
yeah, so you felt marginalized. Did you experience racial discrimination? I mean, I imagine yes, as I have.
yeah,
And that
yeah.
empowered you. So tell us a little bit how that transformed your life.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I always tell people that, like, for me, the two sources of a lot of my creativity and a lot of my subject matter and the stuff that's shaped me, really, the raw material for my current self is hip hop culture and Asian American movement, the historical Asian American movement that began in 1968.
Mm.
And really hip hop was this culture, because the dope thing is, and I'm not sure how many folks know this, but hip hop obviously comes from black and brown communities in the Bronx and in New York City, and then it spread to Atlanta and Chicago and DC. But the ethos of hip hop has always been come as you are. It's always been, hey, if you're here and you can hang and you know how to move right and you know how to be respectful, you belong as much as anyone else.
I didn't know that.
The
Yeah.
Yeah, the OG, KRS-One of the great rappers of the golden age, the 80s. That's what he said. He said, hip hop is something you do. Hip hop ain't something you do, it's something you live. And it's this ethos of, knowledge of self and knowing how to move right in different situations, knowing how to everything from how to handle your money to how to treat others well. Um, and so for me, hip hop became this space that really taught me as a young Chinese American man. Um, I owe so much to this culture because it taught me, you know what I'm saying? I'll very, very simply, Sylvia, like my parents, God bless them, they didn't experience being 14 in America. You know what I'm saying? My parents came to
I know.
America
Yeah, the
for
generational divide.
university.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and they're great. Honestly, my parents are amazing. My girl loves them. My friends love them when they see them. But you know, there's certain things that they weren't equipped to teach
Of
me.
course, your mom
And
was a classic tiger mom. I mean, how else
yeah.
would you get into Yale if you didn't have, this tiger mom ferociously prodding you to study, right?
Yeah, right. And so very like for a very, 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 very shallow but profound example, my parents they never teach me to talk to girls. You know, my parents they never teach me how to like, you know, and I'm not even saying like, you know, be weird or anything, but even just like literally like to go on a date, you know what I'm saying? That wasn't
For sure,
modeled for me. How
for
to
sure.
how to dress myself, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? How to like
yeah, yeah.
look cool instead of just look presentable. You know what I'm saying?
I
A lot
know.
of Asian parents be about looking presentable.
Yes. Yes. I know they're
But
more
but yeah.
practical. They're like one
Mhm.
generation away from arranged marriages if they haven't had a arranged
Yeah.
marriage themselves. So there's this generational divide that, I think
Because their
that you're
parents.
addressing through your rap, right?
Yeah, because their parents ain't taught them that neither. So, you know, exactly. That's a very good way to put it generationally. So, in so many ways, this was a culture that taught me how to be proud of who you are and where you come from.
Wow.
I'm not saying that my parents aren't, but you know, how they're proud of who they are and how they see it as a blessing and how they see it as strength is different than what spoke to, you know, a teenage kid in an American high school. And so that was really what caught and captured me.
It's
And
identity. It's
yeah,
identity, right?
it is.
You embrace
It
your
is.
identity as a Chinese American, though you didn't
Hmm.
look like the typical rapper, you felt
Hmm.
like you had a home in this, and you found your voice and your message. And
Yeah.
that's powerful, Jason.
Thank you. Yeah. And so that's how I fell in love with it was just, you know, it was something that and this is important too, I think, for, you know, a lot of audiences to know, like it's so much deeper than you know, it is how you dress and how you talk and how you walk and how you style yourself.
Yes.
But it's also but all of that is something that comes out of a deeper root, right? And that deeper root, exactly what you're saying, is identity. Having the confidence to be yourself and be your best self and explore who yourself is too, right? Because that's something that a lot of marginalized communities, you know, in America by race, or you know, in other places by ethnicity or by income level, something so many of us are not taught
Yeah.
and not given space is to explore who we are and how we're feeling, right? So often, and hopefully this speaks to your audience, that anyone who's feeling like they have to perform a version of themselves
Oh, yeah.
for someone else, you know, whether that's your boss, whether that's your coworkers, whether that's your kids, whether that's your church, whether that's, you know, your class in society, your peers. To me, hip hop, the message I got over and over again, and the message that still makes me cling to it, is it says like who you are is enough. You know, just being your truest self.
Yeah. Well, let's talk more about the message that you're spreading now, with your activism in,
Mhm.
about Asian American hate, or fighting that hate. And
Yeah.
if you tell us a little bit more about your message now, why it's so important, and how, any old Joe who isn't Asian can relate to it. Like, why should people care?
Yeah, so what I usually start out with saying is that Asian America has a representation problem, but not the one that people usually think of when they think of media, right? When you think of media representation for Asian Americans, usually the conversation is, oh, we don't have enough TV shows on the air. Or, oh, we don't have, yeah, we've got Simu Liu and we've got Gemma Chan and, maybe 20 other people, but those are the only ones.
Yeah.
And obviously it's so different in Asia. It's so different in Asia. But in America, what we often think about as representation is seeing more faces that look like us. But I actually don't think that's the problem. That's a symptom of the problem. The actual problem
Mhm.
is that what it means to be Asian American, the history of this community and this identity and it's actually a movement. It's a conscious movement has been erased. And this is how. So actually, I'm gonna ask, like, Sylvia, do you happen to know when the phrase Asian America or Asian American first came into being?
Absolutely not. But I remember in the 90s or late 90s, early 2000s, I was exploring the biculturalness of who we are,
Hmm.
and I'm Canadian, as Asian Canadians. And at that time, there was just this kind of revival of, being proud of being hyphenated. And we were the
Yeah.
generation that grew up with Connie Chung and nobody else, right? And there was no
Yep.
Asians as teachers or in positions of authority, or we weren't reflected in movies, and unless it was Bruce Lee or someone who was like a martial arts expert. And I didn't realize how lonely and marginalized I felt in some ways until I got together with other Asians who felt the same way. And we never knew until,
Yeah.
through the platform of Rice Paper Magazine, we created this forum for people to come together. And it was
Mhm.
very transformative. It was empowering. I would love to know, when did that phrase come about?
Yeah, right. So this is something that you don't get um, unless you really dive deep or know someone.
Yes, yes.
So Asian American is not actually a descriptive term. It's actually a chosen identity.
Mm,
And it's just like how the black community, right? You remember like when we were younger or at a different time, um, the phrase that was used was African American.
mm,
And then it changed because the black community said, look, we're not African, we're American, but what we are is black. We're gonna own black, there was this song, right? Say it now, say it loud, I'm black and proud, you know? Um, and in a similar way, what happened in 1968, there was a movement called the Third World Liberation Front, which was a group of students in the San Francisco Bay Area. And this was actually a pan-racial, multiracial movement. There were Latinos, there were Black folks, there were Indigenous folks, and there were different kinds of Asians. But at the time, we weren't called Asians. We were called Orientals, right? The
oh
West
yeah.
called us Orientals. And so you still see this, the Oriental Trading Company or the Mandarin Oriental, right? Um,
It's a colonial term.
and it's a colonial term. It's a term that was thrown on us, not a term that was chosen by us.
Mhm.
And so uh, two students, Yuji Ichioka and Emma G, a Cantonese American woman and a Japanese American man, they gathered a bunch of other Japanese and Chinese and Filipino students together. And they said, hey, our communities have a place in this movement for justice. What the Third World Liberation Front was about was they were calling for universities to teach Black history, teach Asian American history, to teach Native American history like it's American history,
Yeah.
right? Not a separate, sequestered,
Yes.
side optional topic,
Love it.
but this is part of the fabric. If we're here to learn history, why are we only learning histories that aren't of our ancestors? If we're here to learn science, right? Why are all of the scientists that are being held up as model exemplars not from certain communities. And so all of these different folks, again, Latinos and Black folks and Indigenous people and Asians, gathered together, and the students went on strike. They didn't go to class, they picketed, and they said, we're not going to go to class until what you're teaching us in the classroom is fair.
Wow.
We don't want to monopolize the conversation. We just want to be in the conversation. We didn't pay all this money to come here just to read things that exclude our grandparents and our parents and us. And so Yuji Ichioka and Emma G gathered together a group of students in their house, and they said, Oriental is the term that was put on us, right? It's actually a very clinical, scientific, map-making, colonial term. They said, what binds us together? Who are we? You know, because before that, Filipinos and Japanese and Chinese, you know, South Asians, everyone was in their own corners. They said, well, we want to fight together. We want to be part of a solidarity movement. And they came up with the phrase in their home, in their rooms. They came up with the phrase Asian American, and they said, this is what we're going to be from now on. If you want solidarity with others, if you want justice, if you are Asian, or you know your family lineage, your ancestry goes back to Asia, and you want to stand side by side with others who are fighting to have not just our voices but different voices heard at the table, then we're going to call ourselves Asian American. And that got lost. And this is why, because of immigration history. So that was 1968, right? And in 1965, what had just happened was the passing of the Hart-Celler Immigration and Nationality Act. Now, up until 1965, America actually had strict quotas on who was allowed to become American. And specific, right? And so we know that this is Chinese exclusion, 80 plus years of East Asians not being allowed to become American. America was not, you know, welcome all the huddled masses, right? The Statue of Liberty was facing Europe. It wasn't no Statue of Liberty facing Asia. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't no welcoming lady with a torch. It was come and work and then get out. And so in 1965, they opened the borders due to political pressure and due to the fact that America had been conducting war in Southeast Asia. Right. And so all of these wartime allies that had been given promises of relocation, all these people who'd fought on the side of the American military, who had lost and died on the side of the American military, their families and their tribes were now at risk in the countries that where they'd lost, right? They'd been traitors to the administrations that came in. And so due to that kind of pressure, America opened the gates in 1965. And so what you have is you've got this incredible movement in the late 60s of socially conscious Asian American folks who are saying, we've been in this country, some of our families have been here for 4 or 5 generations. You know, they came over as laundry workers and as railroad workers and as, you know, indentured servants. And we've seen what this country can, the best of it and the worst of it. And we want to fight for the best of it. But then now all of a sudden the doors are open and the floodgates open and a new wave of first generation immigrants come in who don't know that history.
Wow.
And in the 70s, there are media campaigns to actually turn these minority groups against each other. So that by the 80s and the 90s, just by sheer virtue of numbers, that revolutionary history, that justice history starts getting drowned out and diluted. And so Asian American starts becoming a descriptive term rather than a chosen identity, an identity that means I'm invested in a certain kind of future and vision. And why this matters. So obviously, you know, if you're Asian Canadian, if you're Asian American of any sort, this matters. But even if you're not, what blew my mind when I was taught this, and I was not taught this in high school, I was not taught this in college. I had to find and seek out mentors who were alive in the 70s and remember the 70s and say, this was how it went down. And they showed me, you know, the newspaper, the indie newspapers they printed and the flyers. Hey, we're having a rally.
Yeah.
And it took all of that to get to know this. But
Wow.
this is why it matters, right? Because it's a solidarity movement. Because if people listening, if there's people out there who care about building what the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. called the beloved community, right? This community of all people living together, knowing each other, seeing each other, acknowledging each other's uniqueness and the pain of that and the beauty of that. If that is a vision that matters to you, this matters because this is a piece of that picture. This is literally pieces of the foundation that that dream is built on.
That's incredible. And I'm seeing a revival of that very
Mm-hmm.
identity, Asian Americans, Asian Canadians taking a stand, even political in the political arena. And it's very inspiring to see a rise, in voices that are
Yeah.
emerging, because we're considered the model citizens who don't speak out. We just put our heads down and we work damn hard. And it's, yeah, wow. And I had no idea about the history behind that term, and yet we're reaping the fruit of it. And I've met K.W. Lee. He was the first Korean
Mm.
American journalist who, when he
Yes.
shared, when
Chol Su Lee.
yes,
Yeah.
when he shared about how he was affected by the Exclusion Act, and how, Asian American men were neutered in the early
Mm-hmm.
days, and how hard it was. I mean, he moved the whole room of journalists to tears. This is in the 2001 or so. And then I met Yuri Kochiyama, who was a bridge
Yeah.
between the African American community and the Asian community, and she was quite close to Malcolm X, who was a lightning
Mm-hmm.
rod. But you remind me of that kind of a bridge. You remind me of, the spirit of Yuri Kochiyama, trying to bring people together and heal broken people, heal broken communities. And one more thing I want to add is, because I feel fired up after listening to that history. I had the same thing. I had the same reaction to reading World War I and World War II history in my school textbooks, my Eurocentric school textbooks, and yet learning from my
Yeah.
mother that there's this alternate history of young girls as 11, Korean, Asian, Pan-Asian girls and women
Mm-hmm.
who were coerced into sexual servitude by the Japanese military before and during World War II. And seeing the text whitewashed and not mentioning that really made me feel terrible, at
Yeah.
this not being included. And yet that also forced me to seek out, research outside of school, and to seek out people who had the answers, these walking history books. So now,
Mm-hmm.
what are you doing with that message? How is that influencing you? And how do you feel about
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. I mean, it's everything. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those things. My academic mentor, Dr. Daniel D. Lee at Fuller Theological Seminary at the Asian American Center, we've talked about the idea of conversion and the idea of like multiple conversions. And what I mean by that, not like, you become religious multiple times, but what I mean by that is like the metaphor of conversion, right? It's like once you see the world a certain way, you can't unsee it. You
Yes.
know, once
Yes.
once 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 you have an identity
Yeah.
that you own and that you have, you are never not that. It may change, it may grow, you may push it away, but there's always this new like spectrum of color that you see, right? So um it's in everything I'm doing right now. My music, my activism, my education, they're all, I see them as like braided together. You don't know where one starts and one ends. Um so I've got a new album that'll be coming out later this year called We Were the Seeds. And the title comes back to that idea of these generations. We were the seeds they sowed. It's like
Mm-hmm.
the lives that are growing now, the movements, like you're saying, now there's so many young Asian American, Asian diaspora all over the world, Asian Australian who are saying, who were the ones who came before. We know we're not the first. We know that, and sometimes our ego likes to tell us we're the first, right? Sometimes our ego likes to tell us like, oh man, ain't nobody done this before. Man, I'm special. But that's so lonely, right? And then when you get off that ego trip and you start going, man, I wish I had someone to connect to. I wish I knew my elders. I wish I knew the ones, I always think about how, man, I watched like, the Brady Bunch or Leave It to Beaver. And I wonder like, man, who was like the Asian American Brady Bunch? Were there, Chinese people wearing like corduroy pants and tight button ups? Like
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
are those people? And so it's incorporated in everything I do. The music, We Were the Seeds is, it's not didactic. It's not like, here's my TED talk in a
Yeah.
3-minute song,
Yeah.
but it's woven in to,
Yeah.
and again, this is what hip hop has taught me, because through listening to hip hop music, I learned Black history. You know
Oh,
what I'm saying?
yeah.
Like I learned the name, I learned about the Black Panthers. I learned about Sojourner Truth. I learned about Fred Hampton. I learned about Angela Davis. I learned about Malcolm X. I learned about, you know, W.E.B. Du Bois, even. Like I learned, George Washington Carver, all these things. I learned their names and their places in our shared history, in our American history, in our world history, in our communities' histories, because of hip hop music and the way that they, this is something that's very true, I think, for both Black and Asian cultures, is we respect our ancestors. You know what I'm saying? We
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
respect
Sure.
and
Sure.
we admire.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's everything.
Yeah. Thanks to Confucius, although there are
Yeah.
elements of Confucius that need to be flushed down the toilet,
Hmm.
especially the suppression of women and women's rights. But you've hit the nail on the head of something that I've been thinking about a lot, and that is the preceding movements should be honored. We need to
Yeah.
honor those who paved the way, who were the forerunner of forerunners, and we must respect and honor those who came before us. And I believe that that can affect the new movement. Like, there will always be new movements, but it's really critical for me, so that there's no division, because often the elders, they
Yeah.
struggle with handing off the baton, because they still feel like they're relevant, and they still feel like, well, the nostalgia of, oh well, we were involved in this, and there's that struggle. And then the younger generation, or the ones leading the new movement, could often disrespect what came before. And I
Hmm.
really believe we need that harmony, that unity of the generations, walking together, to make an impact for social change. And so, yeah, thank you for amplifying that message, Jason. Uh, your music has really hit Hollywood. It's on the Kung Fu TV show, Snowpiercer, the Tetris. I mean, tell me about the message in these songs that have been picked up by so many, and feel free to describe other shows that that your music is featured on.
Yeah. No, and that's the really okay. So the funny thing is, I didn't grow up speaking Chinese. I learned Chinese when I was at college, because
Really?
there was a language requirement. Yeah,
I
I
thought
didn't speak no
your tiger
Mandarin at
mom
home.
didn't force you to go to Chinese school and learn Chinese characters.
No, so that I wouldn't have an accent. We only spoke English at home and everything. And so, when I finished studying in college, really also the deal was there was a fellowship, there was grant money so that you could spend summers abroad in Beijing. And I
Yeah.
was like, yo, that sounds amazing. And then I came back from my second summer abroad and I was like, okay, I'm probably never gonna use Chinese again, man. You know? But the funny thing is, fast forward a little bit,
Yeah.
and now all of these incredible like Asian American, Chinese American shows are coming to air finally, speaking we were talking about media. And the message is always now, writing music for TV is a little different than writing music for like an album or a streaming service, because they may have a certain storyline that they want you to go along with or whatever. So for example, one of the ones I'm super proud of, Warrior, right? This
Yeah.
TV show on HBO.
I heard
It's
that
about,
song. I heard your song. We'll share a link.
yeah,
We'll share a link in the comments.
yeah, LinkedIn, please go link it in. But yeah, so I'm gratefully very, very blessed to have two songs on season one and two songs on season two, and I know season three is about to come out. Um, and there's an episode where some of the characters take a trip to Mexico because I think they have to go rescue, another character. And so we had this really cool collaboration where my friend Chops, who's a legendary Asian American producer, he was part of the first group, the Mountain Brothers, who were signed in the 90s. He produced the track. I rap on it in English and Mandarin. Our friend Ann One, this incredible Korean American singer, and she's been very active with Tiger JK's label. She sings the hook, and then a Mexican American artist has a verse on it in Spanish. And so some of the TV stuff, it's really fun because you get to kind of tell a story that's not yours.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah,
much of
yeah.
what I do is tell my story. And that's certainly some of the other records are things that reflect that. For example, I know that my group, Night Market, we wrote a song called No Hate. Uh-oh, No Hate, is what it's called. Uh, we wrote that in 2020 at the beginning of the rise of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Mm.
And, the anti-Asian sort of xenophobia that swept much of the world at that time. And it's just talking about, you know, man, don't like, it's super corny to be hating on people because of your misconceptions or prejudices. Um, and it wound up that one really resonated with this one TV show, and they're using that as their closing credits.
That's
You know,
amazing.
so
Congratulations, Jason. Yeah.
that's the neat thing that I found is that when you tell your story, when you speak about what's real to you, and like you said, for me, that's the reality of hope and healing in the midst of, sometimes it can look like a really broken world.
Yeah.
That resonates with other people who see that same world and maybe have those same experiences.
Yeah, that's powerful. So my final question, and then I will ask you to add whatever message you want to add after. Um, who inspires you? Who motivates you to bring inspiration to others?
I'm gonna say, and this may be awfully cliche, but right now the first person that came to mind was my grandma, because
Oh, yeah.
she's actually the most outgoing person in our family. She's 90, she turns 90 this year,
Wow.
and when we go for walks, she lives in San Jose in the Bay Area, and when we go for walks around her neighborhood, she'll always be stopping to talk to strangers. She'll ask them about their dog, or
Yeah.
she'll say, "Oh yeah, we moved into this one, and oh." The house looks like this, and what does your house look like? And she's just somebody who enjoys connecting with strangers. I don't always enjoy connecting with strangers. I try to be kind and good, and I love my friends, but my grandmother is one of the most uh, willing to spend time to sit and to listen and to
Oh,
share with
yeah.
others.
Yeah.
And and that's the energy that I want to see more in our world, right? I think there is so much of this is what I'm about, and if you're not about this, then
Mm.
I don't got nothing to say to you.
Yeah.
And my grandmother's the opposite. She's, hey, here's me, and who are you, and let's commingle.
Love it.
And
She
that's
embraces,
something that touches me.
yeah, she embraces everyone. Quick question, what does grandma think of your rap?
Oh,
It's
she
an
loves it. She loves
unconventional
it.
career, but she embraces it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, she watches the music videos, and I show her, the TV episodes, and my music comes on,
Yeah.
and she has yeah, she watches my music videos. It's super cute. Like my
Oh,
uncle and my dad, they helped her set up her phone so it can go to the TV, and she'll
oh,
search me on YouTube and
oh, that's precious. So final message that you want to share, anything about yourself? What do you want to say, Jason?
yeah, I think. I really kind of what I just say, like this is who I am. And that may or may not resonate. That may or may not fit much or most or all of who your listeners are. But I hope that our shared humanity is what can bring us a vision for the future.
Mhm.
Because I think when, there's real issues that need to be talked about, and there's sometimes times when we can't come to agreements. But I think we have to see each other as human.
Mhm.
We have to see each other as having dignity and worth and beauty. And and I hope that what I shared about hip hop or Asian America can help your listeners see a little bit more humanity and beauty in people and things and ideas that maybe they didn't know before. And if I can do that, then my life has been well spent.
Absolutely. It applies to anyone in the world of work, and anywhere. And that's why I believe in listening to diverse voices and not just my crowd, my bubble of friends,
Yeah,
and even children. Interacting with children
yeah,
enlarges a different part of my brain. So I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled with our conversation. I felt like we could talk for another 5 hours.
easily.
It's always amazing to reconnect with you, Jason. I hope your song could be on my TV series and that we can
Let's
collaborate,
go.
maybe in the world of K-pop in the years to come, because I would love to start a K-pop band in addition to being the Oprah of Asia. But
Let's go. Let's
let's
do it.
stay in touch. Thank you so much. And if you want to get in touch with Jason, I will leave his website and also his LinkedIn profile. You're on LinkedIn, right? Obviously.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
in link. I'm on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you for watching.